Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda, and today I'm going to talk about the Agatha Christie 7-day, 7-book adventure that I embarked on last week. I chose 7 books at random. I have about 70 books that are Reader's Digest versions from my grandmother's collection that I inherited from her, and so I chose at random 7 books. I'll list them all in the description below. Today I'm going to kind of rank them based my least favorite, starting with my least favorite, all the way up to my favorite. I'm an Agatha Christie fan. I've been reading her for as long as I can remember, and these are 7 books that I had never read before. However, when I did start to read a few of them, I recognized them. The David Suchet Poirot series it's on like Masterpiece, and you'll find it on PBS on occasion in the US. It is phenomenal, by the way. David Suchet is the embodiment of Poirot, but I had seen some of these books in the adaptation of his show. So that was kind of interesting to actually finally read the book that the show was based on. I actually found that the show was quite devoted to the source material. I won't hold up the books because, as I said in my last video, these are the books. They all have blue covers with gold letters and they all look the same, so I won't hold up the books. I will flash the book covers up here. A few of them, they were written in the 1930s. They've since been released under a different title, and so potentially as I'm talking about it, the different title will kind of flash up. So if you see a discrepancy between the title that I'm actually saying is in the book and the title that I flash on the screen, it's actually due to a discrepancy between when the book was released and the later versions. The least favorite book that I read of Agatha Christie is actually Passenger to Frankfurt, and it breaks my heart because I read that this book was her 80th release, that was released on her 80th birthday, and I wanted to love this one so much. It doesn't have a recurring character in it. It's actually an independent spy novel, and I think she was trying to be a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more funny, but for me, it really fell flat. Sir Stafford Nye is the hero of this book, and they call him Sir Stafford Nye throughout the entire book, and it's annoying. I don't know why it became so annoying, but it's very annoying. I just found that the story plodded along a little bit. It wasn't terribly exciting for me, and the end was just a little bit too formulaic and tied things up very neatly in a weird little bow. I really didn't care for it. Mr. Parker Pyne Detective was my second to least favorite. This wasn't a bad book. This is actually a series of short stories based on Mr. Parker Pyne, who also goes by Mr. Parker Pyne throughout the whole series. It starts out, Parker Pyne has advertised, "Are you unhappy? If so, please contact Parker Pyne, I'll help you," in the local sort of newspaper, the help ads, and people are answering his ad. They show up at his office, they tell him why they're unhappy, and he solves their problem. And so each story is a new problem, and then as it progresses, Parker Pyne tries to take a vacation, and obviously he solves some cases along the way. So it's interesting. I think each case was 12, maybe 20 pages in total duration, so it made the book fly. It's only 213, I think, pages, but it was a pretty good book. But again, I wasn't terribly thrilled. They did have a Death on the Nile story, which I thought was a little bit interesting, very different than Murder on the Nile, or Death on the Nile, that's a Poirot mystery. I've seen that one on TV, and I've actually read the book as well. So this Nile death was different than Poirot's Nile death. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Sad Cypress, and it actually starts out the trial. Eleanor Carlisle is accused of killing Mary Gerard, and so it starts out with the trial, and then it flashes backward into the story, and you kind of catch the story. It's a pretty interesting tale having to do with inheritance and jealousy and some of your sort of common motivators for this type of crime. It had a pretty interesting twist. I didn't, when they murderer was revealed, I actually didn't see that one coming. So that was a pretty interesting one. Not a bad read. The next book is Ms. McGinty's Dead. And this actually starts out after the conviction of James Bentley. And James Bentley is convicted of killing his landlord, Ms. McGinty. And Superintendent Spence is convinced that this man is innocent, and he hires Poirot to help prove that this man is innocent so that he doesn't have to take, so that Superintendent Spence doesn't have to be a part of convicting and hanging an innocent man. And so Poirot goes to a small town, Broadhenny, I think that's how you pronounce that. He goes to Broadhenny and he stays in a boarding house, and it's actually a little humorous because obviously Poirot is a little bit snobby, he loves his food. The woman who runs the boarding house has no problem in just scraping the mold off of the top of jam or opening a can of something that's just a little bit expanded. So it's kind of funny to see Poirot's kind of snootiness as he lives in Broadhenny trying to solve this crime. I found the characters to be quite compelling, the story to be really interesting, and the twist at the end when the murderer is revealed was really fun. It was unexpected, but it wasn't so far-fetched to be ludicrous. So I recommend this book. I thought it was really great. My number 3 selection is Poirot Loses a Client, and in this one, finally, Hastings actually has a big role. Hastings didn't really take part in any of the other Poirot mysteries that I read this week, which was really strange. Poirot receives a letter 3 months after a woman has died, and in the letter she's begging him for help. It's relatively incoherent and it says something about a dog and a ball, but Poirot's really not sure what's going on, but he's super interested. So he goes to check it out. He and Hastings go to check it out, and what they find is the same day of the letter that obviously arrived late, but the same day she wrote the letter to Poirot, she also wrote a letter to her lawyer changing her will, and she basically disinherited her entire family, and she left all of her money to her companion. Basically, everyone that was disinherited in the will that didn't know about it needs to be investigated. The twist in this story, again, is very unexpected. The characters maybe not quite as compelling as Ms. McGinty's Dead, but the story itself was so much more enjoyable, and Bob the dog plays a pretty big character in this tale, and I enjoyed it very much. My number 2 pick, Funerals Are Fatal, and this was a really fun story. Poirot is a pivotal character in solving the crime, but he actually doesn't appear in the story until page like 64 of 210 or something, so he's actually almost halfway into the book before he's introduced. Basically, there's a funeral for an elderly man, so no one questions whether or not he has been murdered, but his family gathers. He's very wealthy. His family gathers for the funeral, and his sister, who he lost touch with at some point in his life, they haven't been close, actually alludes to the fact that he was murdered. And then she goes back home, and she herself is brutally killed in her cottage. And so there's some question as to whether the two events are related, whether someone was, you know, she was onto something and someone was trying to silence her. It is a really interesting tale of misdirect, and I was hooked. I thought it was tremendous when the misdirect is actually revealed. Duh! My gosh, I never saw that one. It was pretty cool. And my very favorite book that I read last week was 13 at Dinner. And I didn't know this, but evidently 13 for dinner is very unlucky. And if there are 13 people at your dinner party, the first person to stand up at that dinner party is the first to die. The story is the tale of a woman. She's an actress and she's used to being the center of attention. And she's estranged from her husband and has been for quite some time. To anyone that will listen, she tells everyone that she just wants him dead, and she tells them how she's gonna do it. She's gonna take a taxi up to his place, she's gonna walk in, she's gonna kill him, and she's gonna leave. And then he is murdered in that same way, and a witness actually puts her at the scene. So someone saw her walk in, and then the people inside of the house actually saw her walk in to where the victim was at the time of the murder, But she has an ironclad alibi. She was at a dinner party the whole time. In fact, even got a phone call during the dinner party. She never left. So how could she be at two places at the same time? And if she wasn't, then who in the world killed this man looking like this actress? In the interim, in trying to solve this crime, another murder occurs. And so it's a really interesting story to see whether or not these two murders are related, whether they're completely separated, how someone could be in two places at the same time, who would be stupid enough to profess to the universe that they were going to kill their husband and then kill them in the same way that he actually died. It was a great tale. When the murderer and when the plot was actually revealed at the end, I didn't see it coming necessarily. I felt like I had some clue as to what was going on, but as it turns out, I didn't really understand as much as I thought I had during the movie. So those were my 7 books that I read in 7 days. Did have quite the adventure. I'm really excited to continue to read the rest of my Agatha Christie collection that I haven't read before and reread some of my old favorites like The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, or And Then There Were None. Some of my oldies but goodies favorite, Murder on the Orient Express, that I haven't read in quite some time. So I'll keep catching you up as I read, and I'll let you know my thoughts, and then maybe one day I'll do a more comprehensive list on the Agatha Christie stories that I enjoy and those that I don't really care for. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell so you don't miss any of my other uploads. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.